want to thank Alf and the Showmakers crew for joining us today. Just before we finish up with our last panel of the day, I just want to give you guys some fun information that I've come across throughout today. We've had folks all the way from Australia, India, Indonesia, Netherlands, Sweden, Spain, Trinidad, and Tobago join us to view the panels, participate in discussion, and just sharing the information. So thank you so much. Before I introduce the next panel, I just want to let you know that we have a quick little Zoom happy hour. We'd love to see you, to connect with you directly. So feel free after this panel to click on that red button under the screen that says join session, and make sure it's the 4:30 p.m. EST session. And we will see you there so we can chat with you a little bit more directly. Until then, I'm gonna introduce our next panel by bringing in Jason. Jason, take it from here.
Hey everyone, I am Dr. Jason Lee Guthrie. I am at Clayton State University, kind of south of Atlanta, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. I Will Survive, Music Production in a Pandemic. We ended up getting a really full slate of panelists for this, myself and Stephen, we kind of invited some friends, and then we had so many good people to talk. So I'm going to do my best to really keep us on schedule and make the most of the hour that we have. I'm going to do a really quick introduction of everyone on the panel, and then I'll let them kind of talk a little bit more about what they do sort of within the context of the first question. So on the panel today, we have Stephen Potaczek. He's an assistant professor of commercial music at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. Odie Blackmon is an associate professor of commercial songwriting at MTSU, Murfreesboro. Daniel Howell is the production director. I think I had a small typo in the write-up in that, for the Renaissance program at Bethel University in McKinsey, Tennessee. Chad Evans is the chief recording engineer at Gaither Studios in Alexandria, Indiana, and as well as an instructor at Anderson University in Anderson, Indiana. And Andrew Ratcliffe is the CEO of Tweed Studios and a recording instructor for Tweed Recording Audio Production School at Athens, Georgia. So the first question that we're going to tackle is just, how has music, how has the pandemic affected your work in the music industry? So just for a little bit of context, everyone on the panel today is in education in some form or format. Some are at public universities, some are at private universities, some are at more like vocational training. But everyone is also involved in the music industry proper in various capacities as well. And so we kind of want to draw on both of those experiences. So I think for the first question, we'll just kind of go in the order of the program. Stephen, if you want to kick us off first. But again, the first question is, how has the pandemic affected your work in the music industry?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Obviously, as an educator, it's affected a lot. But I'm really a pracademic and have spent a good portion of my career as a music producer and an artist and a songwriter and a mix engineer. And so I'll say that I, in particular, have done so much more virtually and have been doing a lot of artist sessions sort of piecemeal together virtually. So like, hey, here's kind of like the bass that I'm thinking will be there, and the guitar that I'm thinking will be there, and drummer, kind of use your imagination, and then and we kind of piece it that way. There's a lot of cool technologies that have helped, like Sound Better and Skype and things like that have helped make those sessions a little easier. But it's still, I think, a very unique way of approaching the art, and in a way that I don't imagine will go away anytime soon.
Odie, you want to hop in next?
Sure. Well, it's pushed me a little bit, Bob Turner, as we say in Nashville, as far as production. I'm more of the creative side songwriter, but it's pushed me into doing more things in Logic and writing and going back and forth with writers that way, because Zoom can be kind of, there's a pacing to it that's different than being in the writing room. So it's been fun to send things back and forth instead of being in the room.
Let's see, Daniel.
Yeah. So at Bethel, we actually have a tour, and so we were in mid-tour when it all shut down, and so all of our live production just basically completely stopped. But similar to Stephen, we started making records and recordings with people's iPhones and videos with people's iPhones. So that was really interesting. I actually did a virtual orchestra one time. That was crazy with, a full orchestra. So I've heard it best said that, limitation forces focus. And so this season really forced me to focus on just making the most of it. And so I was thankful to have the work and continue to do that at Bethel and just be as creative as possible. And it was fun for our students and for all of our staff as well. So,
Chad?
Yeah, so we were kind of flung into quarantine like most of you, I'm sure. And so I was working from home. Luckily, I've got a decent setup at home here at Gaither Studios. And this was prior to my semester starting at Anderson University. So I didn't have to worry about class just yet. But any extracurricular clients that I would have outside of the studio disappeared, other than some tuning and some mixing, because we just weren't getting together to record. So we started utilizing one of my clients. We started utilizing a plugin called Listen To, and it's kind of like trying to do Zoom, but from a more higher quality audio standpoint. And it was really challenging. I'm not going to lie. The whole working remotely and thing we've done for years, but the collaborating and trying to accomplish recordings and getting mix approvals and things on in real time is really challenging in the quarantine. And it's certainly affected the industry and our business here at Gaither, even though we're primarily an in-house facility working for Bill Gaither and the company out of Nashville. Our custom client work was still really important to us. It's just completely disappeared. So we just have our first session coming up here in a couple of weeks, or just actually it's about a month. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
And then teaching just a whole nother thing. So
yeah. All right. Andrew?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here. We were fortunate enough that we built this 12,000 square foot facility with 4 studios in it and Pro Tools labs, and actually have a 125 person capacity venue in the front of the building. So I kind of drew on the 24-year history I had of running a recording studio and reached out to some friends that I knew were being in a bubble and being careful. And, we were able to bring people in the building. I mean, even down to assigning each person that was traveling with someone or around someone into their own restroom space. I mean, it was very meticulous, very, very methodical, and, just testing after testing after testing. So we were able to live stream and pull off some pretty incredible things in the weirdest time that I think any of us will ever experience in the music world. So we were very fortunate.
Yeah. I mean, fingers crossed that we're getting over a hump. And that kind of ties into the next thing I want to talk about. I mean, I think with this panel, it is to an education audience. So we do really want to share, how we've adapted teaching, what kind of innovations we've come up with. But everybody can also share. I mean, if things are in the context of just your everyday work, I mean, that's also of interest. So, I mean, if anybody really has some that they want to drop in, I mean, some of them were hinted at. But yeah, so I'm especially interested to hear, what are the things that you had to do to adapt just to either keep the lights on, if that was your situation, or to keep the classes going. But, as the pandemic is kind of winding down, if anything really sticks out, that's an innovation that's popped up that you will see yourself utilizing even post-COVID, and kind of speaking to that, that might be kind of especially of interest, I think. So we can either go down the line again, or if anybody just really has something they want to say, you can go and hop in.
I'm sure. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. So, we went an entire year without like getting on a bus and going somewhere. And so one of the first things that we really had to try to figure out is how do we provide performance experience? We are a performing arts program. How do we provide performing arts experience for our students? We didn't feel like just not performing was going to be a viable option. And so, obviously with, every university had their own COVID protocol. So as we're utilizing that, we invested pretty quickly in a video setup, something that, a 6 or 7 camera system that it provided an avenue for us to train our students on how to use video. We were primarily just doing audio and lighting. And now all of a sudden I'm having to teach them how to operate a switcher, how to, operate a camera. And so it really forced us into a cool situation where we could stream virtually. We could do our concerts here and in a closed environment, but be able to do that at a high quality, because we've all seen, the thousands of live streams from Facebook and YouTube done so poorly, and we wanted to be able to stand out above that. So teaching students how to mix for broadcast, the standards for that, how to light. That was one thing I had to learn is, lighting is everything. You can have the best camera in the entire world, and if you have terrible lighting, it's still going to look horrible. So learning how to light appropriately is a lot of experimentation from the beginning as each event got better. And, we did like 6 or 7 events. And so we'd take notes and say, okay, let's try this. So, learning how to learn and adapt each step of the way was really important, but it was really encouraging to see our students grow in that too and learn something they've never learned before.
Odie, did you?
Sure. So I have a class that's the capstone songwriting class. It's we call it the songwriting practicum, and students write like they're in a publishing deal. And every week I have a hit songwriter come from Nashville, which is 30 miles away, and critique songs. And then we go into the studio with pro session musicians from the Nashville community. And so going to Zoom for the pro critiques is something I'll stick with now, because we were just using the Nashville community before. And now I'm comfortable, working with people in other scenes and areas, not just when they happen to be in town working, so that's good. With our studio sessions, we continued all semester, fall and spring. And I have to give props to Bill Crabtree, the director of the MFA audio program at MTSU, but they would set up 6 iPhone cameras, and we used the Listen to Pro Tools app. And so we would have 6 cameras and a student on a switcher. And the songwriting students made their calls. Of course, they got with the session leader beforehand to chart tunes out, talk about arrangements via Zoom. But the songwriting students, we would have possibly one songwriter in the control room with 2 students, one running Pro Tools, one on the board, but spaced out really big. All the session players were isolated, and we were just really careful, but everybody could talk to each other via Zoom through talkbacks, but listen to the music through the Listen to app. And something Daniel said earlier about limitations, it makes you focus. We cut back on a session here. I don't know how everybody, a 3-hour union session in Nashville. In a demo situation, you're trying to get 4 or 5 songs, usually tracked, just the basics. We cut that back to 3. Everything had to slow down because of the pacing of talking back and forth. And that was a really good lesson to learn as far as taking that time. So I think it was a good learning experience.
Yeah. Chad, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. We didn't really have a lot happening remotely from the university standpoint. At the studio, we set up one of our studios. We have Studio A and Studio C at our professional recording studio here. And we essentially started full-on Facebook Live, Zoom, podcast, anything and everything that we could come up with content-wise to get out there digitally. And interestingly enough, Bill, our boss, he just embraced it and really jumped on board, and it was really a kind of a good learning experience for us too, to learn how to collaborate in a different way with other people all over the world, mostly here in the United States, but still getting the schedules together and Zoom and the whole technical aspect of it and recording it, producing these kinds of events. We've done a few, but it wasn't our normal thing. So it was really great to learn all of that and be able to keep working and keep producing content and ideas and creativity during the whole thing. Although, like Odie was saying, at a slower pace, which I think we could also glean some positive things out of, slowing things down a little bit and being a little more considerate of the situation. From a production standpoint, we already had kind of a pretty cool thing in place here. Now at the university, they were able to utilize the, I'm sorry, I think they call it the film department or video and film department with the, in conjunction with the School of Theater and Dance. And they did some really great productions, like Daniel was saying, of they went out and got the gear and shot their live performances, and they kept the dance going. They kept theater going. They still did productions. We did one, they turned one into a podcast, more of a radio drama. And it was really, really fun to work on. It was really, really fun to be a part of. So, yeah, I mean, we still kept thriving. I thought I saw a tremendous amount of resilience from faculty and students and just everyone that was a part of the whole process. So it was great.
Andrew, if I would love for you to share and share a little bit of the context of the type of model that your recording program uses, because it's a little bit different for those of us that are more in the traditional education model.
Sure.
How have you all adapted?
So we did. We were scheduled last semester to run this program, last year, and it's an 18-week, 544 contact hour offering. I mean, it is drink from the fire hose, 11 to 12 hours a day to prepare you to go and do what we all know is stepping into the cave and not coming out for a couple of weeks without spending a lot of hours. So, but rooted within that is, intellectual property, how to start your own LLC, life skills classes, things that, we kind of learned collectively on the way to say, man, I sure wish somebody with gray hair would have told me that at a certain particular point in time. So we were able to do that. Actually, tomorrow is, we had 7 students. We finished 18 weeks and we're able to do it and do so carefully in a, like I said, a very strange time. So, there were a lot of things that we had to learn about too, as Daniel would say, is, being audio based, but turning our venue into an appropriately lit room for high, internet broadband streaming. And we weren't doing it over Facebook. And I think the whole world kind of realizes it doesn't matter what camera you have or what lighting you have. It matters on the how many people throttle the internet around you at that particular point in time where everybody's getting on the internet. So, we pulled off a couple, knock on wood, where we were able to live stream them, but the majority of them were pre-recorded. And it gave us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that. And, I think on the artist side of things too, what was really interesting to see is that we did a 5-night run with some dear friends of mine, a band called American Aquarium from Raleigh, North Carolina. And they did an album each night in its entirety from top to finish, and then told the stories in between. And what dawned on BJ about the third night, he said, I'm going to continue to do this, not necessarily, in this exact format, but we've reached so many people that either we didn't go to their town or weren't physically able to be there. And, it's a whole new construct for them to catch the fan base. So, we were able to do some really cool things and learn a lot in the process. And I think prepare, with this offering too, that sure, one of these kids could go work in any studio in Nashville and sit down the console and have all the knowledge how to do it. But now, now more than ever, go get in a garage somewhere, go get in a warehouse and start your own thing, because I got a feeling that the folks that I'm talking to over the next couple of months, you're going to have a hard time getting into a studio to record because things are coming back in a good way. So we're excited about that. So I would challenge all of your students to go get back in the ecosystems and the weirdness and create and be a part of the creative economy and the IP economy and help resurrect this industry. Man, we need it big time.
Yeah, it's really good. Steven, you want to wrap up kind of this part?
Yeah, I think honestly, there was such a confluence of the technology combined with this horrible pandemic that allowed us to keep moving forward. I think of things like Dropbox and cloud sharing, combined with like I had mentioned Sound Better earlier. I'd mentioned in our video, we'd talked about Soundtrap, Band Lab is another one, but they're, for guys like me who are so Pro Tools based, I feel like it would be impossible to try and teach Pro Tools virtually. I think. I mean, I have never seen it. I've not seen it done well yet. Maybe at a big school you could pull that off. But the bandwidth required is so much. But when you have cloud-based solutions like BandLab, I think you've really opened up the door not only to virtual sessions, but really creative collaboration across the ocean. And so I don't see those going away anytime. I think that you talked about Spotify even buying one of those companies, and so there's clearly a big market in the industry to get in on the music creation side of the piece of the pie. We often talk in MIA circles about how the music products industry is very stable and consistent, and I think a lot of record labels and companies are starting to see, there's actually a lot of potential financially from a music creation side of the coin. And so I think we'll see a lot more attention spread there, a lot more limelight from a financial revenue model in the industry, but also really just a lot of innovation as a result of this pandemic.
That's a good segue into what may be a kind of a quick question for everybody, but from a practical standpoint, really of interest. So we mentioned a number of different specific tools that people have kind of identified throughout this, whether it's like the online, cloud-based DAWs, or the listen to. Is anything else we haven't mentioned that anybody found just really, really useful throughout the process?
I think for me, and it was Andrew kind of talked about it with a live video streaming, in the construct of bandwidth. And that was one of the biggest things. I just did not want to have, I didn't want to have people texting me and say, oh man, your video's stopping. So we found a service, and I don't get paid by them at all. Like I had to pay a lot for that. But Resi has been a absolute godsend for us to be able to stream 1080p, even from a cell phone, connection has been wonderful. Now it is, it's one of the higher price services, but it is well worth it. It has made our lives. That was just one thing I didn't have to worry about. I hit the button and it went, and I could focus on the other things rather than is my internet connection good. So
yeah. Anybody else? It could also be physical tools as well. For those of you who had some kind of in-person component, that I'm just kind of assuming that a lot of the innovation and the quick searching was for different aspects of the online issue.
We had to try to figure out a way to make our higher end production camera feed work with a laptop through Facebook Live. And Facebook Live really just wants to see, at least from our research and what Doug, our video editor, was finding, it just wants to see the internal camera and internal microphone. Or you could hook up an audio interface and you could see that, but he was having trouble getting the camera. Yeah. So he used a little Black Magic box and was able to trick basically Facebook into thinking that was our internal. So we were able to get a really good feed for Facebook Live. So that worked out really well.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, I mean, I'll throw out a couple. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Blackmagic line, video line of product it's been a very affordable line to get into. So if you don't have any idea of what to look for, Blackmagic has a lot of stuff, even as cheap as, just a few $100s all the way up to, very high end stuff. A great company that has really thrived through this.
Yeah. I mean, I can share for anybody out there that may be coming from a program that's not as sort of thoroughly resourced, or not that everybody on this panel is coming from a school with huge budgets, but most of these programs are really geared towards fully professional level. So, for instance, Pro Tools, as Stephen mentioned, is really the go-to. My institution, we have Adobe at school, but most of my students wouldn't even have a computer at home that could run Adobe, much less, could afford a personal subscription and, things like that. So that's how I kind of stumbled across Soundtrap, again, being one of the cloud-based DAWs. And honestly, for teaching beginners, I loved I would say it's even more intuitive than like a GarageBand, just as far as like, I have no idea, I've never used a DAW before, where are the buttons, type of a thing. And it can do the basics, it can do volume, it can do pan, and there's some basic effects, and the lack of having too much more than that can be a little bit of a strength when you're teaching true beginners. And of course, I was teaching podcasting. You can make loops and do the music part, but the limiting is a little bit easier to get over with podcasting as well than it would be with full-on music production. And maybe just a couple of other things to throw out. Some of the sort of, someone mentioned, the issue with Facebook Live or Zoom, and the compression. There's a couple of services that are sort of like Zoom, but better. Things like Squadcast and Riverside, Zencaster, is an audio, mostly an audio focused platform. A lot of those can record in full res. Of course, they're always going to be limited, as Andrew mentioned, by the bandwidth. We did. I don't know the answer to this question, so I'll just ask. Somebody asked in the chat, the Resi option. How do you find that? How do you spell it? Just so it can be searched correctly.
Yeah, that's spelled RESI.
SI.
Yeah,
great.
And the way it does, it uses like a tape delay. So it's like a 2-minute tape delay. So if your event starts at 7 p.m., you actually start at 6:58. And then if there's any dropped packets, the cloud will say, "Hey, send that again." So it's truly is lossless 1080. Well, not lossless, I should say that. It's a true 1080. You're not going to drop frames. You can even lose internet for 2 minutes and still have a stream. So yeah. Yeah,
the Squadcast and Riverside, their thing is they record locally and then upload to the cloud after. And I mean, they can theoretically record up to 4K, but again, it's going to be dependent on what kind of camera it's hooked up to, the bandwidth issues, all those kinds of things. The next place I wanted to go is kind of a similar thing about tools, but what are the tools that you wish existed? That what are the spaces for innovation? It's like, if I had a system that could do this, or if I had, a camera or interface, or what's the opportunity there that the pandemic's kind of exposed? Because, like as we mentioned, a lot of there's a certain amount of convenience of everybody working from home and having work at home setups, but where's the opportunity to continue to innovate in that space where work from home becomes, fully professional work from home becomes possible? Chad, I don't know, maybe you would be able to kick us off with that.
Sure.
In the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my wheels were spinning. They're thinking if we had tried the Digi. I didn't give it a great shot. It was the collaboration software that they use. Watched all the demos. Instead of a session, it's a project. I think it's cloud-based. It's pretty cool, and it's really close to doing what I think I would want it to do. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the dream scenario obviously would be, as close to real time as possible. Lag.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That would be the dream scenario, and that's just not possible. At least not that anywhere that I found yet. It would be absolutely amazing. But that does come pretty close. I mean, it's pretty cool. I don't know if you might, let's just try. I'd love to hear if anyone had any success with it too.
Yeah. For me, just because of the volume of editing that I was having to do on a particular session, and timelines and deadlines that now became, instead of something that would typically take months, is now, you've got a couple weeks to do, I would love to see, I would love to be able to see some sort of technology where you could have multiple editors working on a same session, locally, even if you're on, across a network, a local network. Obviously you can't work on the same part of the session, but if you're working on a video and being able to edit different sections of the video at the same time and be able to have some sort of file reconciliation where it's real time, you're just like the Google collaboration where you can see other people working on spreadsheets. I would love to be able to see something like that. That may be wishful thinking, but that would be a glorious treat.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it is. I think I think we're probably all going to come back to the same thing, I'm guessing, but it really comes down to bandwidth. And I think more than a technological solution from a software standpoint, it really, the promise of 5G, supposing it doesn't, take over our brains or whatever the latest thing is, I think is really potential. I remember in my graduate program, we had, I can't remember, it was some super fast optical line, and now it seems like 5G maybe has some potential there. So I don't know if we're how close we are, but as everybody's been saying, it's just Google Drive is awesome for document multiple editors. Final Cut Pro not so much because of the bandwidth, and same thing with Pro Tools. So I think for me, at least, I'll say it really comes down to just some internet guru guy that can come up with how do we stream this much data at once.
Yeah, Elon Musk, maybe he can figure it out.
Yeah.
So, I think you're right. And,
somebody send him this recording, please.
With the promises of 5G and all that, and being shot twice with it during with my vaccination, ready to be able to transmit the network. But in all seriousness, no, I do know of some projects going on that people are actually working on, kind of going back and lighting up old copper and fiber lines, dark fiber lines, and doing exactly what we're talking about and having some success in it, funny enough. So somebody out there will figure it out. It's too good of a getting everybody in the same room without being in the same room and having no slack whatsoever, I think is the dream that we would like as musicians in recording.
So Andrew, I know you mentioned the live venue, but you've also got a foot in the kind of sound for film world as well. And if you follow it, here in Georgia, it's really, really boomtown right now. A lot of investment in that infrastructure, especially with Marvel coming here. And so, you may see innovation sort of pop up with that, with that amount of resources to draw on. That'll really help. Odie, do you want to say anything about songwriting? The songwriting part is kind of the part that doesn't need all of this technology and bandwidth to go on. But
it would be nice to have more real-time solutions. I'll say something I didn't mention before is that this pushed me to have my students collaborate with students in Australia, Norway, and Sweden, as well as Denver. And some really cool things, even though it's still a little wonky co-writing over Zoom, some really cool collaborations came out of that. And the other thing with all the cameras, I don't know if I can make it happen, but even when we go back to person, I'm with Andrew, everybody wants to be together to make music, but I always have my students do reflection. We have either reflection papers or reflection time after a session. We talk about our successes and failures, more importantly, and maybe there's a way to incorporate some actual video to go back and look at of how things went down in the communication skills department.
Yeah, that's great. That's I like that insight. There is one specific question that popped up. Has anybody used VST Connect from Steinberg? I'm not personally familiar with that. Has anybody tried that one out? Okay. Well, kind of where I wanted to push from this, and then if you're listening and you want to get in a question, go ahead and get those in, because we'll get to those after this. But just where do y'all see things going? You can speak to this specifically from education. It may be maybe more interesting to think of this question more in the context of just the industry in general. But of course, that affects our students. But yeah, I mean, how are things going to change? What has fundamentally changed, and what's just going to bounce back, hopefully better than ever?
Well, I know for us, one of the overwhelming consensus within the staff and even the students was that even though live touring is looking like coming back, us going out and doing live shows in the fall, is that there would still be some sort of component where we are still doing live stream events, and even have had discussions on making that a part of our tour production, where we are taking what we did in a single location, but now making that portable. And that's, that is a challenge to say, okay, we've done it in one location. How can we do it and set it up super fast and be able to do it in multiple locations, and try to think through all those variables. But I think that's been a really encouraging thing. And for us to be able to look at and to challenge our students. And that was one reason why we really leaned in. This kind of goes back to our first question, but why we really leaned in towards doing a live event rather than a pre-recorded event that was edited down. And we did one of those for our Christmas thing, but we wanted our students to have the pressure of knowing that there is someone on the other side of that camera, as opposed to perform for the camera, do it as many times as it takes until you get it perfect and then edit it down. But to have the immediacy of, once I finish this song, it's done. Like, I can't go back and redo that, And so I think that's going to change our live events a little bit. Like, obviously you're going to have people in the room that you're playing to and performing for. But to know that there's a vast bigger audience beyond those cameras, that you not only have to communicate to the people in front of you, but you have to be able to communicate artistically to the people that's not in the room. And that's even more challenging because there is no connection there physically. So you have to be able to creatively do that. And from a production standpoint, how do we get out of the way so that can happen? How do we be as seamless as possible so that communication, that message is transmitted, and it not being distracting?
Yeah, it's good. Anybody else? This one.
What was the question again? Was it?
Where do you see the industry going after this? Like, what things have fundamentally changed, and what things we look to just maybe bounce back better, hopefully?
Yeah, I believe live performance will bounce back pretty strong. It's hard to imagine it coming back 100% anytime soon. But I do think it will come back, and I do think it'll be strong. It's just, I think there's still going to be a tremendous amount of apprehension, especially with the overarching fear that's surrounded this past year. And I mean, it's a strange anomaly now, walking around even without a mask, and getting used to that. I know it sounds a little silly, but I'm fully vaxxed and all that. And I go out and I feel like I have to walk around going, I'm vaxxed, when I'm not wearing a mask. So I think there's still going to be a lot of apprehension for certain people to go shoulder to shoulder in a venue. I think there's still going to be spacing. But I do think it's going to come back strong. Eventually, I think I hope it gets back 100%. I don't know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts.
The demand is there. That's and hopefully, that the absence, the scarcity, will make the audience really connect with that demand. So that's something to look forward to. Anybody else want to? Yeah,
I think that you're in a prime time right now to start walking or crawling back into it with majority of things that are happening outside and a little bit more space and everybody kind of getting their legs back underneath them. And the other thing that, we're seeing is that a lot of that industry that is required for the live thing to work. I mean, there's people who have left and they've gone and gotten other jobs and they realized, oh, wait a minute, I can actually be at home and be with my family. And so there's this resurgence happening or this flip that's happening with people that need to be trained. I mean, we're talking to some folks the other day from a touring company and they're going, we need some help. We need some people that are trained and know what they're doing. So, I think 2022 is, as I've heard several times, it being referred to as a monster year. But to Chad's point, I mean, it's a two-sided conversation that we've seen is number one, we know everybody that hasn't had live music is ready to go and watch it. But what is the willingness of the band to take the risk? Because they're the ones that are revolving, going from town to town to town and walking into these bubbles where you've got people that are vaxxed, that are not vaxxed, and it's a risk. And I think there's just going to be some conversation and listening that has to happen and time for that to where it gets to a spot that it's comfortable.
Yeah. And even in the business model, of being live, like, the live show has long been touted as like the one savior of the music industry after the digital download. But, with all the fixed costs and planning a whole tour, and then now you throw in the uncertainty, it makes it really difficult.
I saw this great meme the other day that said there should never be a guest list again.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. It's pretty insightful the way things have shifted. Steven, you had something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say this and feel free to disagree with this. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but for a while there, it's probably been the past, I don't know, maybe 4 years. You've been hearing this great fear, especially among administration and academia, about like the future of college, and for sure we've seen colleges close and what is the value of an education these days and things like that. But man, I gotta say, this idea of us going completely virtual or like getting as much value online as you do in person, I'm not seeing it. I think that colleges have a lot of legs left for just the reality of an in-person education. I think the whole, what do they call it, Zoom fatigue that our students are in and day out, and just seeing in reality our test scores, from K through 12 on up, and how it's affected our educational system with being remote. I have more confidence in the future of in-person education than perhaps I did, and maybe I'm looking at the glass half full, but I think there's some validity to it, and it excites me. Yeah,
that's a great point. This question came in from the chat. I mean, a little bit of a different direction than we've been talking, but I think a really interesting question. How has everyone navigated the student internship question during this time? Right. Most of our programs would value an internship as one of the most important experiences a student's going to have in higher ed. And, what are some things that everybody's done to try to address that, try to make those happen?
We built our own. We had to, we brought in a hip hop label here in Athens and allowed our students to anonymously create beats for their artists. The artists got to choose We bought bands in under very strict COVID. So we just, rather than going and sitting in the studio somewhere and having to wrap cables, and we threw them in the hot seat, man. I mean, for 5 days, they recorded, well, over the 18 weeks, they recorded 15 different bands in 8 different genres.
Yep.
And that was nerve wracking.
Yeah.
COVID and testing
but a great experience, I mean, what a great experience to be able to provide, in a time when, a lot of places are just cutting internships. It's really, and I would guess that the nimbleness of the vocational school model, allowed you to be able to do that a lot, not easily, but just, to be able to make that shift more so than a large institution. What else?
I'm curious, Andrew, did the label pay for that, or was that just like, hey, we need to get our students internships, so we'll give you a free service here?
Yeah, well, every band that came in, some of them, tipped, paid an hourly rate, but for the most part, it was, hey, we're going to grab our friends. I mean, we've got, I think the 7 of us have got about a little over 200 years of experience collectively that, we've been either playing in bands or recording bands. So like I said, they were reached out to the folks that we knew that weren't out licking, door handles and doing crazy stuff. So, but for the most part, it was let's allow students to have a experience and you get content.
Yeah. Odie, do you do a lot of internship stuff, or are you just more in the classroom?
Well, we started a songwriting internship that broke off from the music business internship just as the semester that COVID started. And we did have some students do online internships, but to be honest, I encourage students, if they could schedule their classes, to hold off on internships. To me, it's really important, not just your internship provider, but the people passing through the studio or the offices that they, meet. And so because it was a new program, and if they could schedule and get to graduation, I was telling them to hold off.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything to say about the internship question?
We just weren't able to do any during that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think the biggest thing for Gaither is that they just couldn't top their best intern that they had, which was me. I mean, after I left.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of somebody else.
They just had to say, we just can't do it anymore.
My goodness.
Yeah, we actually had an intern in from AU right as COVID dropped, and she had just finished up her semester, and that was it. Unfortunately, I think it's such a valuable thing. I cherish my internship time from way back when, and I highly encourage students to get some kind of internship. It's just coming back. We just got one at the church I attend. That was from my live production class. And I think we're finally seeing everyone feeling good enough to get back out and do that.
Yeah, one of the things that I did, this kind of ties into the thread where we were all talking about, how much the work from home has introduced video, and the needs of video into the audio, music production world. And to mention another tool that I meant to mention earlier, there's a company based out of Buckhead, North Atlanta, called Cinemaker. If you're familiar with a Switcher Studio, is a very similar type of a thing. It's like an iPad based camera switcher. So you can, not quite as fancy as the Blackmagic system, but able to work on iOS devices and those types of things. So I reached out to them. So I had some relationship there to try to get some internships together, because if video is going to be this much of a part of, what we're doing in the future, that can help fill in those skills. I don't see any other questions in the chat right now. If anybody has any last minute ones, let's try to get them in. I'll just mention this one really briefly. I skipped this one earlier. Somebody asked about Soundtrap versus BandLab. Out for that, I'll just say, come to Stephen and I's session tomorrow. I'll talk about that some more, or just send me an email. Steven's got a question. What you got?
We always love to talk about our glory stories, but come on, like not everything we did worked. I want to hear, what'd you try that didn't work?
Great
What
question.
failed miserably?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes, but I'd love to hear what everybody has to say.
I'll go first and say that I tried Pro Tools with Zoom, and they don't talk well to each other. Avid doesn't want to talk to anyone.
Right.
We tried an outdoor live stream with our marching band, and it was going to be a beautiful day. It was like, we loaded in, it was like 70, bright and sunny. And I was like, man, we're not going to need camera, or not going to need lights. It's going to be great. And then a storm moved in, got super cloudy, basically had to gain up all the cameras about as much as they'd go. And then we loaded out in 40-degree weather. You watch back the video and it just looks terrible. So you can't ever depend on the weather. It will fail you every time.
Steven, we had a similar thing happen, but with Dante. It goes so hot.
I just tried to teach one class virtually. I got quarantined for a week and I didn't know what I was doing. And it was miserable failure. I had like 2 students and one of them was like sideways in the video. And I looked like an idiot. But other than that, things went just great.
Yeah, I tried also to teach a music business or recording class over Zoom. And it was trying to route audio through Zoom and talk about panning in Zoom that is mono. is fantastic. Well, you can see it. If you could hear it, it would sound really good if I put this over here.
So. It really is over here.
I promise.
Steven, I do want to double back on what you said, though, about learning via computer. I mean, we pushed our business of music class online just because our instructor, 72 years old, and John is a titan of the jazz industry, ran Loyola, and we did see that of all the things that we offered in our self-assessment over the past week, that was just the connection that just didn't go like everything else, because he wasn't able to be in the room and just have that human interaction. So I hope we can get back to that soon.
Me too.
Yeah.
I will say, and this isn't a plug for them again, I certainly paid out the what for how many seats to have this, but Slate VSX, you guys know that if you don't have an accurate monitoring, for those of you that are recording, it's so hard, but that solution was really helpful. I vowed I would never mix on headphones, and it's pretty powerful, and it has certainly helped in the midst of students trying to work remotely.
Great.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best things I did. Not headphones, but tuning my running pink noise through my room to know what my room is doing to it. So I know there's some different programs that you can do that to be able to room correct your studio monitors, and that my translation issues have pretty much disappeared because of that. And I would highly recommend, checking into that, is, making sure that your room is tuned and your speakers are tuned to, what's going on in your room.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good spot, to kind of wrap up. I mean, to me, if one theme kind of stands out, from the discussion, I think it's really, a reevaluation of the value of what we do, whether it's as an instructor or as a producer or as a songwriter. It's good to be challenged to do new things. Also good to get back to doing things the right way. We'd have a last minute question about tech support. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that really quickly, like just how did you, help tech support? Anybody have any good strategies or things that they use for tech supporting students? Steven, are you shaking your head?
I just get phone calls.
Yeah.
Lots of phone calls.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to make money off the tech support calls.
Right.
Yeah, no kidding. I find it a lot easier when I'm in front of my Pro Tools system when I get tech support calls and I'm not trying to figure it out in my head. I'm trying to run keyboard shortcuts in my head and things.
when Pro Tools at least gets to the point where like that cloud, group edit version can be really live, it'll be really helpful. I mean, that was one of the reasons that I sort of, again, put up with the limitations of one of the cloud-based ones, is because my students were able to share the project rather than just export an MP3 that I have to listen to the whole thing. So I can actually see their live project, with all the tracks, everything they've done. And I can just record a screencast of myself doing the edits, and then they can just watch me and, go back and apply them themselves. So things like that are, that's a really nice tech support option. I would say in some ways that's better than standing beside them, because you're giving them a video and they can, really go back and follow.
Team Viewer was wonderful for remote sharing. You can, remote control their screen. So I just pretty much always just did that, just download Team Viewer, and that was wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
We tried, I think it was Microsoft Teams that.
Yeah.
Major.
Yeah. My school only, we're not allowed to use Zoom for instruction. Microsoft Teams is no bueno. All right. Armin's want me to remind everybody about the virtual happy hour. We'd love to network a little bit further. We might be able to have, if he might have like more of a specific question for one person, that might be a little bit easier facilitated in that venue. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but thanks so much everybody for coming. Like I said, we try to really pack it in, and hopefully it was helpful to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.